Welcome back to Cashflow Lab, the show where we uncover the real paths to financial freedom. Today, we're diving into the Millionaire Map, how real estate creates wealth, and why it remains really the #1 tool for building lasting prosperity.
It really is. And that's not just, a catchy phrase. Statistically, it holds up. When you look at where long-term wealth comes from real estate, well, it's built more millionaires than anything else.
Right.
But the key thing we're exploring today, the really crucial concept, is that this map isn't just for people who already have millions. We're breaking down the actual practical ways regular people use things like leverage, equity, and specific mindset shifts to go from, well, owning nothing to controlling significant portfolios.
Exactly. And our mission here is to kind of synthesize this whole journey, this progression, into 9 distinct levels. We want to show how an investor's viewpoint, their strategy, evolves.
Yeah, and starts with just managing your own housing costs, and it can go all the way up to, handling institutional level money.
And we need to get into not just what each level is, but how someone actually uses the advantages at each stage. The passive income, the appreciation, those tax benefits to basically fund the jump to the next level.
Think of it almost like a game board. Mastering the early levels gives you the resources, the capital you need for the bigger, more complex moves later on.
Okay.
And the whole thing kicks off with a really fundamental shift in thinking. It's about changing how you view your own home, moving it from just being your biggest monthly expense to potentially becoming your very first investment. And that right there is level 1.
Okay, let's unpack that then. Level 1, it's like the first challenge to that old way of thinking where your house is just a place to live, a cost center.
Exactly. Most people see that mortgage or rent payment just vanishing each month. Poof, gone.
Yeah, money out the door.
But the investor or the potential investor starts to see it differently.
Mm-hmm.
And the first way they often capitalize on this is through what people call the house hacker strategy.
House hacking.
Yeah.
Right.
And it usually starts small. Maybe you're renting, say, a 2-bedroom apartment, rents $2,000 a month. You split it with a roommate, $1,000 each.
Standard stuff.
Then your roommate moves out. Now, if you just cover the whole $2,000 yourself, suddenly you've got an extra $1,000 expense you didn't budget for.
Right. That hurts.
But the house hacker thinks differently. They find a new roommate, but instead of just splitting it 50-50 again, they charge the new person, say, $1,200 or maybe $1,300.
Okay, so they're covering their share and then some.
Exactly. That extra $100 or $200, that little bit of profit, that's the light bulb moment.
Yeah, the realization that you can actually make money from the space you control, even if you don't own it yet.
Precisely. And if you can make a few bucks off a spare room you're just renting,
right?
What happens if you actually own the whole property?
Yeah.
That thought process, that's the spark. It's what often leads to the duplex move.
Right, making the leap to ownership, but strategically.
Yeah, the goal shifts. It's not just subletting anymore. It's buying a small multifamily property, often a duplex, maybe a triplex.
And using specific financing, maybe?
Often, yes. Things like an FHA loan can be key here because they often have lower down payment requirements, specifically if you, the owner, are going to live in one of the units. So you buy the duplex, you move into Unit A.
And you rent out Unit B.
Correct. And the financial impact is, well, pretty immediate and pretty significant.
Because it directly tackles that biggest expense most people have, right? Housing.
Absolutely. The rent you collect from Unit B, ideally, covers most, or maybe even all, of your total monthly mortgage payment.
So you're essentially living rent-free or very close to it.
Which is huge in itself. But there's another layer here, and this is critical. Unlike when you were renting, now every single month, a portion of that mortgage payment is paying down the loan principal.
It's forced savings going straight into your equity.
Exactly. It's building your net worth automatically. If your mortgage payment is, say, $2,000, and maybe $500 of that is principal in the early years, you're effectively socking away $500 a month into this growing asset.
So you've slashed or eliminated your biggest expense, and you've started building equity in something that's probably going up in value over time anyway.
That's it. That combination, reducing expenses while building equity in an appreciating asset, that's the foundation. That's where the real wealth building game actually starts.
Okay, so your home stops being just a place to live, a liability, and it becomes your first income-generating asset. Once you get the hang of that, the next step seems pretty logical. You move beyond just covering your own costs.
Right. You transition from just being a house hacker to becoming, well, an official landlord. You eventually move out, maybe start a family, need more space, but you keep that first property. You don't sell it.
Which brings us to level 2, the entry-level landlord.
Yeah. Let's fast forward a bit. You've moved on from the duplex. But instead of cashing out, you decide, hey, I'll keep this. And you rent out both units now.
So now you're not just offsetting your own costs. You have actual positive cash flow coming in from two separate rental streams.
Correct. This is that basic, buy and hold rental strategy. And it's often talked about as passive income.
Ah, yes, the magic words. We probably need to put a little asterisk next to passive, right? Especially for beginners.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
We have to be realistic here. Yes, the money comes in regularly, maybe while you're sleeping or at your day job, but it is not completely hands-off, not at first anyway.
There's management involved.
Definitely. Collecting rent, making sure it's on time, dealing with tenant issues, screening new tenants, handling repairs. The fridge breaks, the faucet leaks, the place needs repainting between tenants.
The occasional late-night call about a problem.
That happens too. So the key takeaway is the property is working for you, generating consistent income, showing the power of leverage. But it requires your time and attention.
It's maybe less passive and more leveraged income. You used a loan, leverage, to buy an asset that provides a service people pay for.
That's a good way to put it. You're essentially trading some of your free time for an income stream that isn't directly tied to your 9-to-5 job hours.
Okay, so you've got one or two of these long-term rentals chugging along. You're seeing the cash flow. But then you start thinking, how can I make more from this asset I already own without necessarily buying another property right away?
Exactly. That optimization question, that desire to squeeze more juice from the lemon, that leads directly into level 3, the short-term rental game.
Right. Moving from yearly leases to nightly or weekly stays, Airbnb, VRBO, that sort of thing.
This is a big shift.
Yeah.
You go from setting a fixed rent once a year to managing dynamic pricing, almost like a hotel. You're becoming less of a landlord and more of a hospitality provider.
And the potential income difference, it can be pretty stark, can't it?
Oh, yeah. The data we see suggests that in high-demand locations, think tourist hotspots like Miami or Austin, or even international cities like Lisbon, a well-run short-term rental can bring in 2, maybe even 3 times the monthly revenue of a traditional long-term lease on the exact same property.
Wow, 2 to 3 times.
Yeah, the ability to charge premium rates during peak seasons, for holidays, for events, it can make the numbers look incredibly attractive.
There's always a but, isn't there? What are the trade-offs? Because it sounds like more work.
It absolutely is. And this is where, a novice can get tripped up if they only look at the potential gross income. The operational load is significantly higher.
Like what specifically?
Okay, first, cleaning. You need professional level cleaning between every single guest. That's a constant expense and logistical challenge. Then there's managing the bookings, responding to inquiries instantly, handling check-ins and check-outs.
Dynamic pricing isn't simple either, I imagine.
No, you need to constantly adjust rates based on demand, seasonality, local events. Utilities are usually higher because guests aren't as careful as long-term tenants. And insurance, you often need specialized, more expensive short-term rental insurance policies.
And the customer service aspect. That sounds intense too.
It is. It's relentless. If a long-term tenant has a minor issue, you might have a few days to sort it out. If a short-term guest messages you at 11 p.m. because they can't figure out the Wi-Fi password,
You need to respond now.
immediately.
Yeah.
Because your next booking, your 5-star review, depends on it. You're essentially trading lower frequency maintenance issues for constant high-touch customer service demands. And you also have the risk of vacancies during the off-season, which you don't really have with a year-long lease.
So level 3 is about maximizing cash flow, but accepting a much higher operational workload and maybe different kinds of risk.
Exactly. It's a choice. More money, but definitely more active involvement.
Yeah.
But even at this level, you're still managing the property, spending your time. The real breakthrough, the thing that lets people scale significantly, is figuring out how to acquire more properties without waiting years to save up each down payment.
Right. That slow saving process becomes the bottleneck.
It does. If you're making, say, $10,000 a year in profit from your rentals, but you need $50,000 for the next down payment, well, that's a 5-year wait. That frustration is what pushes investors to figure out faster ways to access capital.
Which leads us nicely into level 4. This is where things get really interesting with leverage, isn't it?
Yes. Level 4 is about leveraging created value, not just saved income. And the most famous strategy here is the BRRR method.
Okay, BRRR, let's break that down. BRRR, what does that stand for?
It stands for buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat.
Buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat.
Okay, The core idea behind BRRR is finding value where other people just see problems.
Yeah.
You're specifically looking for a property that's distressed, worn down, maybe outdated, needs work, but it's located in a decent, preferably appreciating neighborhood.
So good bones, good location, bad condition.
Exactly. And because it's in rough shape, traditional lenders might not want to finance it easily. So the first step, the buy, often involves using non-traditional funding, maybe cash if you have it, or more likely, short-term, higher interest money like a bridge loan or hard money loan.
Get control of the asset quickly.
Then comes the renovate phase. This is crucial. You spend money strategically to fix the place up, new kitchen, updated bathrooms, paint, flooring. You're not building a palace, you're aiming for functional, modern, and appealing to renters. The goal here is forcing the appreciation, making the property worth significantly more than your total investment.
Okay, makes sense. You buy low, add value through renovation. Then what?
You rent it out. You find a good, qualified, long-term tenant at the new, higher market rent that the renovated property commands. This step is vital because having a tenant in a lease agreement stabilizes the property and proves its income potential to a traditional lender.
Okay. That sets up the next start.
Precisely. The refinance. Now that the property is renovated, stable, and generating documented income, its market value should be considerably higher than your initial purchase price plus the renovation costs.
So you go back to a regular bank?
You go back to a conventional lender, yes, and you apply for a cash-out refinance based on the property's new appraised value, the after-repair value, or ARV.
And the goal is to pull your initial investment back out.
That's the magic of it. Ideally, the bank appraises it high enough and they lend you, say, 70–75% of that new value. If you've done your numbers right, bought low enough, renovated efficiently, that new loan should be large enough to pay off the initial short-term loan and return most, or potentially all, of the cash you put in for the renovation and holding costs.
Wow. So you get your seed money back, but you still own the property.
Exactly. You still own the now appreciated cash-flowing rental property, but you've retrieved your initial capital.
Which you can then use for the final R.
Repeat. You take that recouped capital and you go find the next distressed property. You repeat the entire process.
Okay, that sounds powerful, like a wealth creation engine. But what are the risks? It sounds like that appraisal coming in right is pretty critical.
That is the major risk point in BRRR, the appraisal risk. Banks have loan-to-value limits, typically 75% LTV for investment property refinances. If your appraisal comes in lower than you projected, even by just $10,000 or $20,000,
you might not get all your cash back out.
Right. You end up leaving some of your capital stuck in that deal, which slows down the repeat part. Experienced BRRR investors mitigate this by being conservative in their estimates, knowing their market comps inside out, and crucially, buying the initial property at a deep enough discount to build in a buffer.
Got it. But when it works?
When it works, it's one of the fastest ways to build a rental portfolio because you're not limited by how fast you can save. You're recycling the same pool of capital over and over again, using the value you create to fund the next acquisition.
You've basically built a system for expansion. That feels like a real turning point, moving beyond just being a landlord to being a strategic portfolio builder.
It absolutely is. It's that shift from linear growth saving for each property to potentially exponential growth by recycling capital. You've unlocked a key mechanism.
Okay, so let's say you've mastered BRRR. We've used it to build a decent portfolio, maybe 5, 10, 20 residential units. Things are going well, cash flow is good, but what happens next? What's the new challenge?
The new challenge is often scale fatigue. Managing 10 or 20 separate residential leases, dealing with 10 or 20 potential leaky faucets or late rent payments, it becomes a significant management burden. Even if you have property managers, overseeing them takes time.
Yeah, the headaches multiply.
Exactly. That growing frustration with the quirks and demands of residential tenants is often what pushes the savvy investor towards the next level. Level 5, the commercial leap.
Moving away from houses and apartments to, office buildings? Retail?
Could be. Small retail strips, office spaces, warehouses, medical buildings. The key shift is leasing to businesses instead of individuals.
And why is that appealing? What's the advantage?
It really comes down to predictability and efficiency. Think about it. A business chooses its location strategically. It's tied to their operations, their customer base, their livelihood. They aren't likely to move on a whim like a residential tenant might.
Okay, so tenant stability is higher.
Generally, yes. Which leads to the first big advantage, longer leases. In commercial, 5-year leases are common, sometimes 10 or even longer. And often, these leases have built-in rent increases called escalators, maybe 2–3% per year.
Predictable income growth baked in.
Nice, very nice. Second, the tenants often have a vested interest in maintaining the property's appearance and functionality because their customers see it every day. They treat the space like their own, which can mean fewer management headaches for the landlord.
Okay, stability, better tenant behavior. What else?
The third, and often the most significant advantage, especially in certain types of commercial leases, is the triple net lease structure.
Yeah.
NN.
Triple net, what does that mean?
In a true triple net lease, the tenant is responsible for paying not just their rent and utilities, but also the property taxes, the building insurance, and all the maintenance costs associated with their space, sometimes even structural elements.
Wow, so the landlord basically just collects a check.
Essentially, yes. It shifts almost all the variable operating expenses and risks onto the tenant. This dramatically reduces the landlord's overhead and makes the net income incredibly stable and predictable. Higher margins, less hassle.
That sounds like a game changer for scalability and passive income.
It really is. That predictability makes commercial assets easier to value, easier to finance, and easier to manage, even remotely. But there's another huge piece to the commercial puzzle: taxes.
Ah, right. We haven't talked much about tax benefits yet.
Well, commercial real estate is where tax strategies really come into play for sophisticated investors. The big one is depreciation.
Explain depreciation. How does that work?
Okay, so the tax code allows you to deduct a portion of the value of the building, not the land, each year as a paper expense, reflecting its theoretical wear and tear over time, even if the property is actually appreciating in market value and generating positive cash flow.
You can claim this depreciation expense on your tax return.
Exactly. And for commercial properties, especially if you use strategies like cost segregation studies to accelerate depreciation on certain components, these paper losses can be substantial. They can offset your actual rental income, meaning you might be receiving, say, $50,000 in positive cash flow. But for tax purposes, you report little or no taxable income.
So your cash flow becomes effectively tax-deferred or even tax-free in some cases.
That's the power of it. It significantly boosts your after-tax returns, and it doesn't stop there. When it's time to sell that commercial property and maybe buy a bigger one.
You don't just sell and pay taxes, right? There's another tool.
Correct. The savvy Level 5 investor almost never just sells. They execute a 1031 exchange.
Section 1081 of the tax code.
Right. This allows you to sell an investment property and defer paying capital gains taxes on the profit, provided you reinvest those proceeds into a like-kind investment property of equal or greater value within a strict time frame, usually 180 days.
So you can keep rolling your profits, tax-deferred, into bigger and bigger deals.
Precisely. You can keep 100% of your capital working for you, compounding growth without that tax drag every time you upgrade. It's a massively powerful tool for scaling wealth over the long term. Mastering depreciation and 1031 exchanges is fundamental to moving up the ladder quickly.
Okay, so commercial offers predictability, lower management intensity via NNN leases, and significant tax advantages. Makes sense. But I know some investors go even further into really specific niches, right?
Yes, absolutely. Once an investor gets comfortable with commercial principles, they often realize that some of the most profitable, lowest hassle assets aren't the glamorous downtown office towers. This leads them to level 6. The specialty investors.
Specialty, like what kind of things are we talking about?
These are investors who ignore the curb appeal or prestige and focus purely on metrics: cash flow, ease of management, stability. Think about things others might overlook: mobile home parks, farmland, self-storage facilities, maybe even things like billboards or laundromats.
Huh. Mobile home parks. How does that work as an investment?
It's actually a fascinating model. In most mobile home parks, the residents own their physical mobile homes, but they rent the plot of land, the pad, underneath it from the park owner.
Okay.
Now, moving a mobile home is incredibly expensive and logistically very difficult. So residents tend to stay put for a very long time. Turnover is extremely low.
Ah, stability again.
Extreme stability. And since the park owner primarily owns the land and the infrastructure, roads, utilities, but not the individual homes, their capital expenditure, the money spent on repairs and maintenance, is relatively low compared to apartment buildings. It results in very steady, predictable long-term cash flow with minimal landlord responsibilities related to the dwellings themselves.
Interesting. Okay, what about self-storage? That seems popular.
Self-storage is a favorite for many specialty investors, primarily because of its operational simplicity. You're essentially renting out secure metal boxes.
Minimal upkeep.
Very minimal.
Yeah.
No tenants living on site, no kitchens, no bathrooms. Crucially, as the saying goes, no toilets. This makes management far easier and highly suitable for automation online rentals, automated gates, remote monitoring.
And the returns are good.
Historically fantastic. Self-storage as an asset class has generated average annual returns of over 16% for the last quarter century or so. That consistently beats many other types of real estate. It's driven by life transitions, people moving, downsizing, divorcing, accumulating stuff. It's surprisingly resilient.
Wow, 16% average. Okay, and farmland. You mentioned Bill Gates.
Yeah, farmland is the ultimate boring but beautiful asset. It's quiet, it's stable, it produces essential commodities year after year. The land itself tends to appreciate steadily due to scarcity and growing global food demand.
And generates income from leases to farmers.
Exactly. You lease it out to operators who farm it. It's about as passive and long-term as real estate gets. The fact that someone like Bill Gates is reportedly the largest private owner of U.S. farmland tells you something about its perceived stability and wealth preservation qualities.
So level 6 is about finding wealth in the uncomplicated, the essential, the often unglamorous.
That's a perfect summary. Wealth doesn't always wear a suit and tie. Sometimes it wears overalls or looks like a row of garage doors. It's about efficiency and necessity.
Okay. So the investor has climbed high. They've mastered BRRR, moved into efficient commercial or specialty assets. They understand taxes. They're probably doing pretty well financially. What's the next barrier? Surely it gets harder to keep scaling.
It does. Eventually, even the most successful specialty or commercial investor hits a wall. And it's usually not a wall of bad ideas or lack of opportunities.
It's a capital wall.
It's a capital wall and a borrowing wall. They've simply run out of their own cash to put into deals, and more importantly, they've maxed out their personal ability to qualify for loans. Their personal balance sheet, their debt-to-income ratio, it's stretched thin. Banks just won't lend them the tens of millions needed for the really big deals anymore.
So how do they break through that? You can't just conjure millions out of thin air.
No, but you can organize it. This limitation is overcome at level 7, the real estate mogul. And the solution is elegantly simple in concept. Stop using solely your own money. Start raising other people's money, or OPM.
OPM,
Yeah.
other people's money, so bringing in investors.
Exactly. Real estate at this level transforms from a solo pursuit or small partnership into a sophisticated team sport. It's called real estate syndication.
Syndication. Okay, how does that structure work?
The mogul, also known as the sponsor or general partner, GP, takes the active role. They find the big deal, maybe a 200-unit apartment complex, a large shopping center, a portfolio of storage facilities. They negotiate the purchase, arrange the debt financing, handle all the legal structuring, and oversee the property management and the execution of the business plan, like renovations or increasing rents.
So they do all the heavy lifting. Where does the OPM come in?
The OPM comes from passive investors, known as limited partners, LPs. These are often accredited investors, doctors, lawyers, business owners who have capital they want to deploy into real estate, but lack the time, expertise, or desire to find and manage deals themselves.
So the mogul brings the deal and the expertise. The LPs bring the cash for the down payment and renovations.
Precisely. The LPs write checks to fund the equity portion of the deal. In return, they typically receive a preferred return, say 6 to 8% annual cash flow paid out first, plus a share of the profits when the property is eventually sold or refinanced.
And what's in it for the mogul, the sponsor? They're doing all the work.
The mogul gets compensated in several ways. They earn fees, acquisition fees for finding the deal, asset management fees for overseeing it. Crucially, they also retain a significant equity stake in the property themselves, often without contributing much or any of their own cash to that specific deal. And they usually get a disproportionate share of the back-end profits called carried interest or the promote after the investors get their initial investment and preferred return back.
So the mogul gets leverage on their expertise and time, building massive equity and fee income without needing their own cash for every deal. And the investors get passive access to large, potentially lucrative deals.
It's a powerful synergy. The mogul breaks through their personal capital constraints and scales their portfolio dramatically by leveraging their reputation, track record, and network to attract investors. They've shifted from leveraging debt to leveraging relationships and expertise.
That's a huge leap in scale and sophistication. Okay, so if being a mogul is about mastering the art of managing OPM and existing large assets, what could possibly be next? Building the assets yourself.
You nailed it. Level 8 is the developer. This is for the investor who looks at the market and says, the perfect asset for this location, for this demand, doesn't actually exist yet, so I'll build it.
Ultimate control, but Sounds like ultimate risk, too.
Absolutely. This is arguably the highest risk, highest reward level accessible to an individual or non-institutional player. It's vastly more complex than buying something already standing.
Why so complex? What's involved?
Oh, everything. Before you even think about construction, you need entitlements. That means navigating a maze of zoning laws, getting permits, environmental impact studies, site plan approvals, dealing with local government, sometimes community opposition.
Hmm.
It can take years just to get permission to build.
Years. Wow. And all that time, you're spending money.
You're bleeding money. These are the carrying costs.
Look.
While you're waiting for approvals, you likely own the raw land, which isn't generating any income. You're paying property taxes, insurance, maybe interest on a land loan, fees for architects, engineers, lawyers. It requires very deep pockets and patience.
So timing and political navigation seem critical.
Hugely critical. A 6-month delay because of an unexpected zoning issue or lawsuit can completely derail the project's economics, potentially wiping out millions in projected profit.
But the reward, if you get it right.
The reward can be astronomical. The successful developer has vision. They see potential in a vacant lot or an underutilized area based on analyzing future trends. Maybe a new highway exit is planned, a major company is building a headquarters nearby, demographic shifts indicate a need for more housing or specific retail.
They're creating value from literally nothing, from dirt.
Essentially, yes. Many of the largest historical real estate fortunes weren't made by simply trading existing buildings. They were made by developers who correctly anticipated future needs and had the skill, capital, and tenacity to build the infrastructure. The malls, the office parks, the housing subdivisions, the stadiums that the world needed at that moment. When the timing, location, and execution align perfectly, a completed development project can potentially return 5x, 10x, or even more on the initial equity invested.
Turning raw land into something vital, that's powerful.
Okay, that feels like almost the peak of individual or entrepreneurial real estate activities or anything beyond that.
There is one final level, a level that operates almost in a different dimension, governed by different rules. Level 9, the too big to fail investor.
Too big to be. Okay, now we're talking about the giants.
We are. These are the institutional behemoths. Think massive private equity firms like Blackstone, huge real estate investment trusts, REITs, sovereign wealth funds, colossal pension funds managing trillions of dollars in assets.
Trillions. Okay, so their scale is just immense.
It's hard to even comprehend. They don't just buy properties, they influence entire markets. Their strategy isn't about finding one great deal or optimizing a single building's cash flow. It's about deploying vast amounts of capital efficiently and achieving market dominance through sheer volume.
Like the stories we hear about funds buying up thousands of single-family homes. Exactly. That's a classic level 9 strategy. They might buy entire neighborhoods of new construction directly from builders before they even hit the open market. Or they'll use sophisticated algorithms and bulk purchasing power to acquire thousands of existing homes across multiple cities, converting them into a massive rental portfolio.
Which definitely impacts the regular person trying to buy a starter home, right? At level 1 or 2 investor.
Absolutely. What feels like an inventory shortage and rapidly rising prices to an individual buyer can be, from the perspective of a level 9 institution, simply the outcome of their large-scale, efficient capital deployment strategy. They operate with enormous lines of credit, minimal friction, and the ability to absorb costs that would crush smaller players.
And what about that too big to fail aspect? Does that mean they don't really face the same risks?
That's the most profound difference. Sources and analysis suggest that these massive institutions often operate with very high levels of debt and can make aggressive bets on valuations, partly because there's an underlying, often unspoken assumption about systemic risk, meaning their scale is so vast, their interconnectedness with the global financial system so deep that their failure could potentially trigger a wider economic crisis, similar to the situation with major banks in 2008.
So they might expect some form of government backstop if things went really bad.
There's a perception, perhaps a calculated one, that governments and central banks would likely intervene with measures, quantitative easing, bailouts, buying distressed assets to prevent a systemic collapse if these major players got into serious trouble. This creates a kind of implicit safety net, reducing their ultimate downside risk in a way that's simply not available to anyone operating at levels 1 through 8.
Wow. So at that level, it's less about real estate fundamentals and more about power, influence, and playing within a system that protects its largest participants.
In many ways, yes. It shifts from pure investment strategy to something closer to macroeconomic positioning and managing systemic influence. Effectively operating with limited downside risk changes the entire game.
Okay, so stepping back from level 9, what does this whole journey, this 9-level map, mean for our listener? Especially the person maybe just starting out, thinking about that first house hack at level 1. How do they even navigate a market where level 9 players exist?
That's the crucial question. The synthesis, I think, is that while the map provides the blueprint, the pace at which you need to climb has become more critical than ever. You can't afford to linger too long at the early levels, just slowly saving.
You need to accelerate.
You need to accelerate through the key leverage points. Master level 1, equity building. Quickly move to understand and maybe implement level 3, cash flow maximization. Or, more importantly, master the capital recycling of level 4, BRRR. Then focus on the efficiency and tax advantages of levels 5 and 6, commercial specialty.
Because those intermediate levels are designed to get you past the dependence on your own savings.
Exactly. They are the escape velocity mechanisms. BRRR lets you reuse capital. Commercial and specialty assets offer scale, predictability, and tax shields. Mastering these allows you to build momentum and capital faster than just relying on your paycheck or small rental profits. You have to internalize those strategies for creating and leveraging value.
So it really comes back to that initial mindset shift from level 1, but applied continuously. Shifting from being just an earner or saver to being a strategic capital allocator. Constantly looking for ways to make your assets and your knowledge work harder.
That's precisely it. The journey is fundamentally about evolving your mindset from consumer to investor to eventually capital manager. And reflecting on that final institutional level, it really makes you think about that old saying.
Which one?
Somebody owns every building you've ever stepped into, every office, every store, every apartment building. Someone or some entity owns it. When you consider the scale and impact of level 9 investors, the provocative thought becomes, how sustainable is a system where the entry points for wealth creation, those crucial first steps at level 1 and 2, become increasingly difficult for everyday people due to large-scale institutional buying? What kind of changes, maybe regulatory, maybe market-based, would be needed to ensure this millionaire map truly remains accessible and doesn't become a ladder with the bottom rungs pulled up?
That's a deep question. Ensuring the path stays open.
It's the fundamental challenge, I think. Democratizing access versus concentrating ownership.
Sure.
It affects everyone's potential for financial independence.
A really powerful thought to consider as we wrap up. It underscores that success in real estate isn't just about finding deals. It's about understanding the entire system, mastering strategy, using leverage wisely, and constantly adapting, no matter which level you're currently on.
Thanks for listening to Cashflow Lab. If you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who's ready to start their journey toward financial independence. Yeah, and maybe take a moment to think about those first 4 or 5 levels we discussed. The house hack, the landlord stage, short-term rentals, BRRR, the commercial leap. Which one feels like your next logical step? Because just listening is one thing, but actually applying this knowledge, taking that next step, that's how you start moving up the map. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.